You ever hear a story about a place that just sounds too wild to be true? Well, today we're tackling a big one, the origin of the Kathmandu Valley. There's this incredible myth about its creation, but as we're about to see, the geological truth is somehow even more amazing.
So let's start with the legend, the one you might have heard. The idea is that a massive ice meteor came hurtling out of space, slammed into the Earth, and carved out this huge valley. It's an awesome image, right? A cosmic event creating a cradle for civilization. But is that really what happened? Yeah, as cool as that sounds, when you look at the actual evidence in the rock, it tells a completely different tale. And honestly, it's a story that's even more powerful. So let's play detective and follow the clues.
Okay, so if you're going to solve a mystery, you need evidence. If a giant meteor was our culprit, it would have left behind a pretty specific crime scene. But when geologists started dusting for fingerprints in Kathmandu, they found, well, let's just say the trail went completely cold.
This is where the whole meteor theory really starts to fall apart. See, a massive impact would leave a nice, round crater. But the Kathmandu Valley, it's kind of lumpy and irregular, not circular at all. And a crater? Nope, nobody has ever found one. But the real smoking gun is the minerals. A meteor strike creates so much pressure, it literally changes the rocks, creating things like shocked quartz. And in the valley, not a single trace. The geological fingerprints just don't match. So let's just be super clear about this. The theory has some major problems. You've got no crater, the wrong shape, and zero of the special minerals you'd expect to find. And on top of all that, the whole idea of an ice meteor carving a valley is, well, it's not really a thing. An icy body hitting our atmosphere at those speeds would vaporize from the heat and friction. It wouldn't just land and dig a giant hole.
So if it wasn't a meteor, then what was it? This is where we get to the real story. And it's a story that's not about a single violent moment, but about immense, slow-motion forces that have been shaping our world for millions upon millions of years.
The real force that built this valley wasn't an object from space. It was something way, way bigger. We're talking about the slow but absolutely unstoppable collision of two entire continents. It all comes down to what we call a tectonic collision. Just try to picture this. The entire Indian continental plate has been grinding its way north, pushing into the giant Eurasian plate for millions of years. That incredible pressure crumpled the Earth's crust, shoving the Himalayas sky high. But as the mountains went up, the land right in front of them actually buckled and sank, forming a huge depression. That depression, that was the true beginning of the Kathmandu Valley. So we have our basin, created by these unbelievable tectonic forces. But that's only half the story. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, the valley we know today was completely hidden, buried under a gigantic, deep lake. Here's basically how it all went down. First, you get the tectonic smash-up. That creates the basin. Then all the rivers flowing down from the brand new mountains start pouring into that basin, but with nowhere to go. Over time, that creates a massive lake. And the final step? The water finally found a weak spot, carving an escape route that drained the whole thing, revealing the fertile valley we see today. And you know, this ancient lake actually has a name. Scientists call it the Kathmandu Lake. And we're not talking about some temporary pond either. This was a massive, permanent feature of the landscape for a very, very long time. And we know for sure it was there because it left behind tons of proof. So how do we know for sure a lake was there? Well, for one, the entire valley floor is covered in these super thick layers of lakebed sediment, fine clay and silt. And deep inside those layers, you find fossils of tiny freshwater creatures. And what's really cool is if you know where to look on the hills around the valley, you can actually still see the faint outlines of the ancient shorelines. The evidence is literally carved into the land.
So we've got the scientific story, right? It's grounded in evidence and rock. But there's this whole other story, one that's woven into the culture of the valley itself. And what's so fascinating is that both stories try to explain the exact same, really important event, the draining of that great lake. The legend talks about the Bodhisattva Manjusri. He looks down, sees this beautiful land hidden under the water, and wants to make it a place where people can live. So, with one swing of his divine sword, he slices open the gorge at Chobar, and the lake drains away. Now, the geological record? It tells the same story, just in slow motion.
It was the Bagmati River, slowly wearing away the rock in that exact same spot over thousands of years. 2 stories, 1 valley. And really, this is the perfect way to think about it. The legend of Manjushri is an incredibly powerful story about creation, about faith, and about building a civilization. It was never meant to be a geology textbook. It tells you about the history of a people, while the rocks tell you about the history of the land itself. Both are true in their own way. All right, so let's boil it all down. What's the final verdict? The myth actually got one huge detail right. The Kathmandu Valley really was a Great Lake once. But it wasn't blasted into existence by a meteor. No, it was patiently sculpted by the immense power of plate tectonics and the slow, steady work of a river.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. Every single landscape on Earth has a story. Sometimes that story is written in rock and sediment, and sometimes it's told in myths and legends. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What incredible stories, both scientific and cultural, are hiding in the hills and valleys right where you live.